Okay, for our second video on Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth, the Dragon Within, I thought, it's kind of Halloween, and I thought I would dress up like Joseph Campbell because when I look at the video, I noticed I still have that jacket from the 80s hanging in my closet. Sad, I know, but I thought it'd be fun to get into the spirit of Joseph Campbell and see what we can learn in today's episode about the dragon. So the best way to start is that we need to discuss just a little how to understand images and symbols in a psychological way. My name is Steve Bond. I'm a Jungian analyst, and I run this channel, The History of Ideas. And every image and symbol has a history. That's part of what Campbell is talking about, but it helps contextualize it if you understand the history. So, for instance, in the realm of images and symbols, you'd have to say a dragon is a mythological beast, and there are a lot of mythological beasts. Part of the idea is, where do those things come from? And believe it or not, I think many of those ancient blends of animal, human, different animals put together come from dreams, and you may have had a dream yourself. I have, in which I've seen a mythological animal. So what are these symbols doing then? How to understand a symbol? And actually in this video, Campbell says the best way to go about it is to understand that something becomes a symbol when it is transparent to the transcendent. I like that phrase. That's his phrase. And that is essentially a kind of reference to Immanuel Kant. I've done other videos. It would take a long time to discuss Kant. But Kant, writing in 1786, is trying to preserve the idea of the transcendent and has various proofs of the transcendent. So a symbol, he says, can be a thing which brings something across the boundary between the noumenal world and the phenomenal world, between the transcendent and the regular everyday world. And the symbol does it through form. The form comes across, but we do not know ultimately the reference of the form. And Campbell says essentially that.
It's the edge, the interface between what can be known and what is never to be discovered, because it is a mystery transcendent of all human research. The source of life. What is it? No one knows.
So we don't know exactly, we can say, on the transcendent side, what a dragon refers to, but we do have the history of the image. So let's talk about that. So first of all, let's get the easy part out of the way. Campbell's quite correct in making a distinction between the Eastern dragon and the Western dragon. We spend most of our time talking about the Western dragon, but just briefly, the Eastern dragon is quite different, and in a way it represents the life force itself, the exploding life-giving quality, whatever that is. We don't know what that is, of course, but the Eastern dragon is not exactly friendly. For instance, I know more about Japan than about China. Yes, in fact, here's my friend. There's a representation of a dragon in the portico of the Sensoji Temple in Asakusa, Tokyo. Way up on the ceiling of the portico, I saw this image, and I was able to find a nice little statue to take home. This is the Eastern Asian dragon. And my friend told me that the temple and those temples, the temple is the dragon. In Shinto, the temple is the dragon. And then I noticed, even then when I was in Tokyo, the ball that the dragon holds in his right hand. And I asked my friend, what is with the ball? And he said, oh, that's your ninth ball. And then in discussing, how to understand the ninth ball, in Japan, the 9 is a lucky number. So we might say the number 7, something like that. So the idea that the dragon holds your lucky ball is that the power of the life force itself can give luck, good fortune, good circumstance. That is a gift of life given at certain times. And the dragon is that force. Okay, that's the Asian dragon. Now, the Western dragon. In this video with Joseph Campbell, he is talking about the dragon, and he says at one point, the dragon is the ego.
The real dragon is in you.
And what is that real dragon?
That's your ego holding you in.
What's my ego?
What I want, what I believe, what I can do, what I think I love, and all that. What I regard as the aim of my life and so forth. It might be too small. It might be that which pins you down.
And I would say from a psychological point of view that that's not quite correct. You could say it's a little more understandable. What Campbell means is the dragon as the superego in the Freudian sense. That is the pressure of society to conform. The pressure from parents, the pressure from the culture to conform. And Campbell, in another place, references a passage in Nietzsche that talks about the scales of the dragon, and each scale of the dragon says, thou shalt. So the dragon is all the thou shalts that tell you you should do this, you should not do that, you should become this, you should not become that. All the shoulds and shalts. That would be the superego from my way of thinking, and in remembering that Joseph Campbell taught for 38 years at Sarah Lawrence College in Yonkers. It's a bit his message to young people to not be intimidated and find some way to overcome an overpowerful superego. And that's how he's using the thought in this video. There are other ways of thinking about it, a different history of the image. And in fact, one of the main aspects of the history of the image. Another way, what is a dragon? What is, in mythology, a dragon is a snake with wings. And then what is that representation of something very earthy, something on the ground, given wings to go into a spiritual aspect? And in that regard, then you'd have to say the dragon is something like the reptilian brain, the basal ganglia, that part of ourselves that is ancient, that reacts very strongly to threat and to arousal. In the Hindu mythological system, you would say the dragon within us is the lower 3 chakras that are focused on food, hunger, sex, and power. That is a part of us. It comes through a bit in the Upanishads that talk about 2 minds in each and every one of us. We have 2 minds, the kama manas and the bodhi manas. The kama means of the body, desire. That's the dragon. Bodhi manas, bodhi, you recognize the word. Bodhi means awake, as in the Buddha, the awakened one. The Bodhimanas is the awakened mind. So inside all of us in the Hindu mythology, there is a struggle between two minds. And overcoming the dragon is to discover that awakened mind. Now, in medieval Christian mythology, it's actually quite similar, because the dragon that we are most used to is identified with concupiscence, that strange Latin word that in the long run comes down to us from Augustine, that equates it with sexual desire. So concupiscence is desire, strong desire, sexual desire. One of the 7 deadly sins, lust. So the typical representation you see, like St. George and the dragon, is the idea that the good Christian knight must overcome his desire, his concupiscence. That's what makes for a good Christian. In Catholic theology, eventually concupiscence meant desire at the root of all sin, which, by the way, then starts to be a little bit Buddhist in the sense of a preeminent saying in Buddhism that desire is the root of all suffering. Now, so that's that part of the dragon. Let's go a little bit more. Jung, already writing in 1912, has his own version of the hero's journey. And in Jung, the dragon is the mother. It doesn't mean the personal mother exactly. Like in the Babylonian creation story, Marduk slays Tiamat, his grandmother. Tiamat is represented as a dragon. And from the body of Tiamat, he creates the whole world. That's a very specific representation of the dragon as the mother. But what Jung means by that in the long run is the mother is the world in which we live in childhood. It's a bit the family of origin, and all of the pressure, all of the orbit and the gravity pulling us around and never leaving the circle of the family of origin. Jung talked about that as kind of an inertia of the unconscious, and the inertia of remaining unconscious without ever escaping from the orbit of your parents, their world, their beliefs, everything about life given to you. In fact, when you think about it a little bit, how is a young person ever supposed to reach escape velocity, to leave the circle of the parents and discover his or her own unique existence? So for Jung, that is what the hero story is, the heroic ego that struggles against the inertia of the unconscious to reach escape velocity and develop into an individual, not a collective, not a person who lives only in what he called the participations mystique, in the mystical participation with the things and people around him without ever finding his or her own individuation to become an individual. So the dragon for Jung is that which holds us back from our individuation. Okay, those are a couple ways to look at the dragon. And then finally, we have this phrase in the video, famously, where Joseph Campbell says, "Follow your bliss."
My general formula for my students is follow your bliss. I mean, find where it is and don't be afraid to follow it.
Can my bliss be my life's love or my
it
life's
will be
work?
your
Is
life.
it my work or my life?
Well, if the work that you're doing is the work that you chose to do because you are enjoying it, that's it. But if you think, oh, gee, I couldn't do that, you know, That's your dragon.
It's a very controversial statement in a sense, because you could say many people in life just doing whatever they want to do, they follow their bliss right off a cliff. That's not helpful, because you do have to face the world. You do have to face reality. And how can you just do what you want to do without paying attention to those things? So I would say specifically, Campbell, in following your bliss, means he's wanting to teach students, young people, to find their own personality separate from the superego. And we all have that. We all have innate aptitudes and talents that we're born with as our genetic inheritance, the things that come to me naturally, the things that I was born to do. And for many people, yes, those are very often suppressed, those that you can't do that. You can't make a life doing that. You can't be, there's the scales of the dragon that Campbell's talking about. But those aptitudes live on and push nevertheless. And so to me, the follow your bliss part is another way of talking about individuation. So I leave that for you to think about. How far have you gone in battling your own inner dragons? To find in yourself that part of you which is your innate aptitudes and personality expressing itself through life, no matter what the outside world pushes and protests. It's the hope that in your hero's journey, you will find your own individuation. That's what I want to talk about. If you enjoyed this conversation about the history of ideas and important psychological concepts, subscribe, click, like, all those things. You help the dragon of the algos find the channel.